Welcome to a new edition of the Gerety Talks. My name is Lucia Gai and I am the co-founder of the Gerety Awards, the award redefining creative benchmarks by showing the value of the female vision in advertising. With this series, we aim to put in the spotlight the industry's true changemakers with a refreshing take on what leadership looks like. Our talk today is about Dutch creativity, and we are joined by our three guests, Inge Ligthart, partner and CEO at Tolen, Marielle Tolen, Associate Creative Director at Media.Monks, and Anna Fontek, Director and Filmmaker at Halal. Thanks for joining us today. I hope I have pronounced your names and surnames correctly, which was quite difficult. So thank you for joining us and for your time. Who would like to start telling us a little bit more about your role and what are the biggest challenges?
I don't mind. Maybe you can tell us who needs to start.
No, it's totally up to you. So Anna, you can go ahead.
Okay. I'm a film director, a documentary director, and I also direct advertisements. So, and the challenges I'm facing are not really advertisement challenges. I think it's more personal challenges on set, like how to keep everybody together, how to convince the crew, how to convince the agency of my ideas. So I don't have big challenges in this industry, I think.
Okay, that's wonderful, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Because I think it used to be a big challenge for a female director 10 years ago, but now I don't experience any challenge.
Okay.
As a female director, no.
Marielle, would you like?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I work as Associate Creative Director at Media.Monks. Of course, in the team, I also have a creative director and an ECD. So my role is mostly, I do hands-off creative work myself. When I say hands-off, I of course mean hands-on. My boss will be watching. So I do creative work myself, but it's also a little bit my role to help all the teammates we have, which are creatives, but also directors, just with a second pair of eyes, really supporting them in getting their ideas to another level, brainstorming, as we believe like two pair of eyes, a fresh look, challenging each other, makes for better creative work where you can, with yourself, spin around in your ideas. We also believe that failing fast is a great asset. So a colleague could tell you like, but why would you do this? Or what's your reasoning? And if you cannot answer, that's great, because then the idea can go off the table and you can continue. So it's a little bit my job to just support the rest in being great and just be a sounding board in that sense. Challenges, I love it, Anna Maria said, like as a female director, because we are very much also working with like, hey, how can we get to more equality and not always make it a talking point, but organically be so. So it's great to hear that you, hardly feel any struggles there. I would say for me, a challenge in my field, because within Media.Monks, I work in the films department, films and content. A challenge, but also an exciting thing is seeing a film as a medium in a different way. I think we're all familiar with TikTok and the 0.7 scrolling through feeds to content. But in the end, we are in the business of telling a story, of taking viewers along on a mood or a feeling. So how do we do that in this new super digital era in a way that is relevant? Should we tap into it in a way that's organic, or just disrupt and go like, that's not film? We go counter to what we see now. So for me, the challenge is, where is film if everything is so snappy and short and you have super talented content creators on TikTok? What does that mean to us? And so it's an exciting challenge to see where you can tap in, but also where you want to deviate and stay true to the craft of filmmaking. So I'm looking everywhere what the new mode is, but I'm also trying to decide, like, should we get along or just stand strong here? Like, cut in if I say nonsense or you have something to add. But I think nowadays just a hero film with some cut downs don't cut it anymore. Consumers are smart, they're fast. So where are they? How do they behave? And how can we then make the best home hitting, beautiful content that we love to make?
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, my background is I grew up in the big network agencies, and especially with here in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, with an agency that was really into branding. So the whole idea of a brand and a strong brand and how you build a brand, that has always been the main topic in my career so far. And now I think the whole context in which we do that has changed a lot. I mean, there's so much, we've seen so much innovation and all the digital transformation that we have seen and that we are still in, and that makes life for CMOs kind of complicated because they have all these channels to react to, but still, keep their brand strong and consistent. I think that's challenge number one. And challenge number two is, apart from the whole digital transformation, you now also see, in my point of view, a value transformation. I mean, the world has changed, and I am a very strong believer that the future of brands is sustainable on the different fields of sustainability, social sustainability, but also ecological. And for me, the biggest challenge right now is to act according to my own principles and my own true north. And I have more and more conversations with my clients, apart from their function and their job and what their organization is doing. So how do you feel yourself? So how would you do it as a person? So I think the biggest challenge is that branding has become a personal thing. I will not work for brands that I think that will harm the world. I think that brands that say we make the world a better place, I think that is bullshit. Excuse me, but because I think the world is a beautiful place, our job is not to harm it. And that doesn't mean that we are refusing to work for lots and lots of brands, because I think that in most brands you see change coming and they want advice on how to behave and how to relate themselves to the changes in the outside world, to a new generation that is coming up as a workforce, but also as consumers and citizens. And they have a different point of view. And so there's a lot of change going on. And I think that's the biggest challenge.
And do you think this, do you think this change was accelerated by the pandemic?
It was and it wasn't. During the pandemic, it was, because everybody was talking about change. I think it did change in our profession something, because we are so fed up with this purpose P&O, beautiful imagery, vignette kind of campaigns. We are going back to what campaigns with a strong idea and well executed in an ownable way. What I see is that for me, and it's the first time that I see brands play a role in the geopolitics, for instance, now with Ukraine, and people are looking at brands. So what do you do? Are you still in Russia? And why are you still in Russia? I think this discussion is a bit oversimplified, but still, it's the first time that we do not only look at governments, but also at brands.
Yeah.
And this will be an accelerator for brands on how to behave in a responsible way, but also to find your inner compass, your true north.
Okay, yeah, that sounds like a big challenge, I guess.
I think so. And I think it's very exciting.
Yeah. So now talking about Dutch creativity, I read in an article that said Amsterdam's history, culture, and ingenuity makes it an international hotspot, not only for advertising, but other creative industries, that attracts a diverse international talent pool to the city, making it a breeding ground for creativity. One big cultural village. So I know the Netherlands is not just Amsterdam, but do you agree with this statement? Do you think there are certain characteristics that make Dutch advertising different to others or specific?
To me personally,
so.
that was a really hard question, because so hard. What is typical Dutch? I'm Dutch. I don't know. And I don't think people are interested, expats from international communities, to come to Amsterdam rather than the Netherlands because we are typical Dutch. I think what could be interesting to them is that it's such a melting pot of cultures, that it's not just this is typical Dutch, learn our way, have our view, but that the view is more outwards and welcoming new cultural ideas or perspectives. Of course, it greatly helps that in the Netherlands, most people speak English. That's probably a big attraction as well. If you as a creative or as a strategist, whatever in our industry you do, really want to speak your mind or get your ideas across, language shouldn't be a barrier probably. So I think the fact that because we are so small, we have to have our view outwards. It could be interesting for people to be attracted to the Netherlands. And if I have to say something about what would be typical Dutch to me, it would be our way or sense of humor. I often see like it's a little bit self-mockery. We have this Dutch saying like, just act normal, then you're weird enough. And we have a play with that, with the self-mockery and that kind of humor that I would call typical Dutch, but that's really a personal opinion and can't call it a generic trait of the Dutch creativity.
No, but I think you're totally right. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Anna.
No, I think you're totally right. I do think that's a typical Dutch thing, the humor, but it's also it's a thing from the 90s. I think that we are based as this. Then the advertisements were super typical Dutch, but I think we are now way more international and yeah, what you said, we have eyes on the rest of the world and we're not looking inside.
I think that has to do with the fact that there's this huge globalization going on. So if you have a trend here, it's the same all over the world.
Yeah.
The funny thing is that I think that Rotterdam now is much more of an interesting cultural melting pot than Amsterdam is. But I still think that Amsterdam has the best resources for expats. And also we're a little bit, I think, cultural agnostic. So if I'm in a pitch for, let's say, a German company and they also have business in the UK, then they say, oh, we like Amsterdam because it's not typical German, typical French, typical English or American. We can work with all these kinds of, and we have a history of being a bit, we have two sides. We are great tradesmen and women, but we also have this preacher man thing over us. So that is, I think, for advertising is and a creative industry, that could be an interesting combination. But I think the main point is that so many people from different nationalities can feel at home here, because it's more of a village than a big city. Everybody speaks English. There's good schooling. So if you bring your family here, you have a good life. So I think it's those kind of practical stuff that makes us, a place where the Wydens and the 72 and Sunnies like to hang out. And a lot of headquarters from big international companies, that helps as well.
The thing that
Anna?
Marielle said is we don't have this typical Dutch culture. Our queen, now our queen, said that a couple of years ago when she entered our country. She's from
Argentina.
Argentina.
Like me.
Yeah.
Like you. Wow, beautiful. But people were so angry at her for saying that we don't have a typical Dutch culture. But she was right.
Yeah.
She was a mirror for us. We don't have this typical Dutch culture. We're good at adjusting, I think.
I think so too, yeah.
Okay.
And that can be a good thing.
Yeah. But don't say it out loud anymore.
No.
And what is your all-time favorite Dutch campaign?
Well, I'm afraid to say, because Anna just went like, when we think about commercials, we go back to the 90s, and I'm like, oh gosh, one of my favorite is from the 90s. I think it was 95. But and I'm sure the Dutchies here will recognize it, but it's for the chocolate candy treat Rolo. And it was just it was cute, but also painful. It took you all over the place. The story, I will quickly recap for anyone that doesn't know it, but it's this little annoying kid standing on the sideline of a circus parade, and he has his last Rolo chocolate treat. And this super cute little elephant walks up to him and he goes like, you want it? You want my last Rolo? And right before the little elephant can grab it, he puts it in his mouth, like really teasing the little elephant. We cut to years later. We see this older guy watching a parade, eating a Rolo. A big elephant walks over and smacks him with a trunk. Obviously, the pun there is that elephants have a great memory. And the slogan was, in Dutch it is, bedenk goed wat je met je laatste Rolo doet. So think very carefully what you do with your last Rolo treat. But what I liked about it is that, and we did it with a lot of ads, it wasn't about pushing USPs, KPIs. It's not this whole story about Rolo is the best treat because XYZ, or we use these kind of ingredients. The whole treat was actually not spoken about, but it got so sticky. I remember me and my brother just at moments when playing around, just shouting out this slogan. So without talking about the chocolate, the brand was imprinted in our kids' brains. And I think a lot of that Dutch advertisement did that, where they had slogans that were so sticky or so humorous that in a way you heard it for ages on the street. So it was just when I had to think about my favorite all time, it's, I think, the first time I was conscious of ads or commercials being cool content to look at it on TV.
Do you think it's a typical Dutch ad?
That's a tough one, because that I can't answer. To me it is, but the type of joke probably isn't. That a kid is teasing and that an elephant remembers forever that this kid was annoying. But I think the slogans like that, we had one for Melkuni as well. I told you, no cannonball flip in the pool, a guy talking to a cow. And for months and months on the street, you heard geen bommetje. So I don't know typical Dutch, but I think we had a couple of commercials here that everyone would just say in the streets.
Even Apel doorbellen.
Even Apel doorbellen. I think there's many, goeie mochel, but I think that's a little bit later. But there were some slogans. Ja, zeker die hypotheker. To you, I know, Lucy, it's all like, what are they saying? Are they choking on their words? But we had many slogans that people would just repeat.
Yeah.
There was actually a commercial for a Dutch bank. It doesn't exist anymore. It's now called ING. But before that, it was the Postbank. And it was kind of a governmental bank. And they had this campaign that was very successful. It had this song about 50 million people living in the Netherlands. And that was actually about the typical Dutch culture that wasn't there because we are all in very, very, very individual living people. So, and that really grabbed the nature of the Dutchies really well. I think it was a famous ad.
Yeah.
Very well done.
Yeah, I like that you bring that one up, because some things, like in the song, they say Dutch people always leaving the curtains open at night. And it was something my mom was always saying, like, oh, typical. They don't close the curtains so everyone can look inside. And it was in the song, right? So for me, that was, oh, we're so Dutch. But yeah, nice one that you bring it up.
They build a whole positioning on that. So
yeah,
that was really well done.
Anna, do you have a favorite one?
I don't have one favorite one, actually. I do have a lot of directors that are favorites. Like, for instance, Bram Schouw, he's a great director. And I think I love all the ads that combine documentary with advertisement. And Bram Schouw is very good in the documentary approach. You also have another director, she's called Basha, also a Dutch director, who's great in integrating this documentary approach to her commercials. There are many, too many.
Okay. And what other projects or campaign that you can tell us about are you currently working on, if you can talk about them?
Ooh. Well, I'm pitching, so I'm not working on it.
Tell us about it.
No, I'm now working for a new bank, but that's all I can say, actually.
Well, it sounds exciting.
Yes, it's very exciting.
Yeah, I also can tell what I'm working on, but what I'm very excited about, what's currently happening, is work being done. I don't know if you know it, but it's called the Unreal Engine. It's actually, I think it was way back developed for game makers, game developers, but it's a tool that allows you to create 3D environments and images. So it's completely digital, but you can play around it together with real-time footage. And I didn't do it, and I will not steal my colleague's thunder, but a colleague of mine actually created this film where he used the digital work from the Unreal Engine. You can change your backgrounds, your moods, but also in camera already do VFX motions and combine it with real life footage. And it was a great advantage, of course, during a pandemic, but it also allows you to work with smaller crews or not travel the world when talking about footprints, but really realistically create different environments around you. And that's just something I'm very excited about. Like, where can this technology take us? How creative will people get with it? It's an open tool, so it's not promoting Media.Monks here at all, but I see people are doing great work with it. So that's currently something I have my eye on everywhere, to see what people are doing and how it can benefit the industry, or maybe even sustainability, but also creativity. It's a very cool thing, I think. But I'm not that technical that I can explain it. I will get lost myself.
And so, talking about management and teamwork, how do you encourage the people that you work with to give out their creative best? Do you have any tips?
Ooh, that's a hard one.
I feel if I jump in, I'll take the whole 30 minutes. That doesn't make sense. But
You can jump in if you know the answer.
well, I also think it's a hard one because the question was how do we encourage to get their creative best out, right? Or so. Not to toot our own horn, but I'm very, very fortunate to work with people that don't need any encouragement from me, cheering them on, like be creative. They are, and they have an incredible drive. But what I try to attempt in any project I'm involved in is to get everyone on board with the bigger idea or the bigger goal we're going for. Of course, we have, for instance, in-house animators, editors, illustrators, and I want everyone to be part of the bigger project. So they also can add a layer. So as a creative, I just have the idea, right? But I'm banking on everyone's skill and expertise to bring me something from their craft. A silly thing to me would be telling an animator and pushing my own view on it, while this person is working day in, day out for 10 years on animation. I think it's my job to listen to their advice, suggestions, wild play, of course, keeping the concept alive and the client needs, but to let everyone add a layer and then keeping it together instead of, when you're building a car together, I don't want to tell someone, you do this screw. No, I'm telling you, we're building a car. And from that, I often see great inspiration comes, great new ideas that I didn't even think of. So that's what I try to do, to get everyone involved and excited to bring me something and to bring something to the project.
But it's hard. How do you make other people excited?
I think it's
Money,
part of
course.
like, sorry?
Money
For sure, which I have no control over. I think it's about having a common goal, right? It can be we're creating something beautiful or something super smart with a small amount of time, but set the challenge for everyone. In my experience, people get stoked when they have input instead of just execution.
Mm.
Inge, what do you think?
Well, we spend a lot of energy in having an agency means you have to think about what kind of culture do you want to breed, and what kind of people do you want to work with you. And I've always been, I'd like the people that have a free spirit the best. Although you also need people, that are very strict and focus on process, etc. But it is a whole bunch of diverse talents that you need. But I think as an agency, creating the best creative work, you need to give a lot of attention and love to crafts, to ideas, but also listen to people, and it doesn't matter how experienced they are. So you need free spirits. I think people with a free mind and a free spirit, they come up with the best stuff. And as soon as you, if you weigh that down, then your business becomes a formula. You become a cookie cutting factory, and I don't want that. So so it is handpicking the talent. Of course, we have the size. We're not as big as Media.Monks is, but and supporting their freedom. Actually, I think that's really important. Otherwise, you'll end up with doing formula-driven creative work.
Yeah.
Mm.
So every day is day one.
I like that saying.
Yeah, that's good.
Reminds me of what you're saying now, of this little book John Cleese, the actor and writer, he has this book on creativity, and he very simply explains what creativity is, if you can at all, right? But he talks about our brain as being the hare, the rabbit, who has to go fast and decision making and deadlines. And you have the tortoise, the turtle. And the turtle is where you can play around, where you can fail, where you can try and push. And the combination of those two parts of your brain allow for, and I'm not saying I practice it every day, right? But it's something, if I'm stuck or I'm thinking what to do, I look at the book, oh yeah, it's time for the turtle brain. Like fail, play around, take your time to not come up with an idea. Then looking at the clock, I get the rabbit in and go like, okay, come on, we have a deadline. But it sort of hits when you say like free spirit or not becoming a formula. It's in that playing area, which you have to give each other, I feel.
Yeah,
And
and
really
you
listen to
need
each
a lot
other.
of input
Input,
Mm.
yeah.
from all kinds of places.
Yeah. And I think we have to listen to each other. That's one of the biggest things we need to do. If I, as a director, if I'm on a new campaign and I have this whole idea about the cinematography, for instance, but I work with my DP and he says, or we can do it the other way. I think it's very important that you don't that you're not stuck on your idea and you're always open for new ideas. But also the thing, what I love about Halal, my production company, they sometimes work the other way around. They don't just ask you as a director for a certain campaign, but they ask the directors, what do you want to work on? And then they're going to search for ads that fit to you instead of the other way around. Because as a director, sometimes maybe that's a challenge that you are defined by the work that you made before, but you actually want to make different work, and that's very hard to get yourself in another corner. For me, for instance, I'm always being asked as a documentary maker, but I also would love to do big sport campaigns, for instance, and I never get asked for that kind of ads because my reel doesn't show.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important that your production company listens to you. What do you want to make? And of course, give you the feeling that they believe in you, and just force the industry to work differently the whole time.
I recognize that. I think, and that's a big challenge. I mean, the best agency is the agency that gets the best questions from clients. So how do you get the best questions? That's because you can get all kinds of assignments, but you know, the right assignments and the right questions that you have really the talent and the gusto for to solve it. That's the best thing to do. I agree.
Good. And very last question so that we can close our talk. What kind of campaigns or topics would you like to see rewarded this year at creative festivals? Talking about all these changes and things that are going on.
I think, like I said before, I think it is time that we reward ideas and campaigns that are executed with love and attention, you know, for crafts, and campaigns that are not a formula, but that really surprise you, or that can touch you or make you feel, you know, that when something happens in your head and in your heart. I think that's because for me, advertising is still an uninvited guest, and you have to bring something to the table.
Yeah.
So I cannot mention a specific idea, but I love campaigns that are executed very well with a strong idea and as unique as possible, which is difficult because everything has been done before. But so if you look at what Uncommon does in the UK, I always am very much surprised by the way stuff is executed.
Yeah.
It's so lovely, and you know, it's yeah, it surprises me every time, and I think that's such a great talent.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe unique is impossible, but originality and craft is not, right? I like how you speak about the love for the craft. And I think that's indeed where you see quality float and then hit with the people.
Yeah, with love for detailing.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the latest campaigns I really liked was about this round the table talk with all CEOs of companies that are not doing the best practices for the environment. I don't know if you know it. It was for our Ministry of Environmental Defense. Talk around the table with all CEOs going like, we quit using oil, we quit doing our practice like that. And then you go like, oh, okay, like we are in a mind shift. And then the ending was, of course, this is unfortunately a fictional ad, but it didn't stop there. It asked me as a viewer to take agency in not allowing this to happen anymore, or me as a consumer to also take my responsibility in moving forward with sustainability or bringing change about. And I would love to see more of those kind of campaigns that, without being condescending or pedantic, address all of us in our thinking. Like, well, do you want to be the person at the table or the one that takes action now? I really liked it, and I would love to see more of that. And if a creative is listening out there, with humor, because I think humor can help a lot, like with the disruption, in a way, changing thinking in a beautiful way where it destructs it, but also allows you to build something on it. Like it can be so painful, but so true. So I love it when a little bit of humor is used to touch upon really sensitive topics.
Okay, well, let's hope to see some of these great things coming on in the next months and in the next year. And thank you so much for joining us and for accepting to be part of this Gerety Talk. And best of luck with all the projects and the work that you do this year.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.